Are we good?
Yes.
Okay, so chapter 1, what is economics? Okay, let me ask you, what do you think, how would you answer that question? Is economics based on, let's just say, is economics math?
Yeah.
Is it statistics?
Yeah.
Is it theory? Does it belong in a business school? Does it belong in the school of math? Help me out here. Does it belong as a social science?
Yeah.
I keep getting a yes to a lot of these questions, but how do we define economics? Truth being, you coming in as, we'll call you a newbie right now, and no disrespect intended, but being a newbie, economics may mean all of those to you. And based on your understanding, you may have seen economics applied or explained in terms using all of those. I can say as a professor, I've seen even universities struggle with where do they place economics. Some universities are going to place it in the business school. Some will place it under School of Arts, okay, and treat it as a social science. I'm of the belief personally that that's where we find economics, is down in a social science field. All right, so we're going to approach it from that level. And what is economics now? What's the textbook tell you?
Economics is a social science that studies the choices that individuals, businesses, governments, and entire societies make as they cope with scarcity and the incentives that influence and reconcile those choices.
There you go. Economics deal with scarcity and the choices that we make. Can we have everything that we want?
I wish.
I wish. No. You'd obviously want to probably have more money. But there is a limit to how much money you have, or limit to how much money you can earn. Okay, so economics is going to deal with our inability to satisfy all of our wants. And this is what we will call scarcity. Because we face scarcities, we've got to make choices. And these choices that we make are based off of incentives that we might receive. Now, there was people in here tonight who said you were in this class because you had to be here. Now let's go back and review that question. I'm going to argue that you chose to be here because there was some incentive that was placed in front of you that influenced your decision, that influenced you to make a choice to be here. All right, so an incentive, a reward that encourages an action, or a penalty that discourages an action. What's your incentive for being here?
Degree, eventually.
An eventual degree. What else?
That's really all I got for you.
Well, what comes with a degree?
Possibly a better paying job. Education.
An education. Better paying job. Higher wages and earnings.
The knowledge to back up the experience.
Knowledge to back up your experience. Okay, I'm going to say the degree. We're probably going to weight these and say the degree, the opportunity for a better paying job, higher wages and earning are probably the primary incentives, or the largest incentives for you wanting to be here. All right, economics. We can divide it into two main parts: microeconomics and macroeconomics. So what are we in tonight? Micro. And what is microeconomics?
Studying the choices that individuals and businesses make, the way these choices interact in markets, and the influence of government.
All right, the study and choices that, and I'm going to underline the word, individuals and businesses make. When we talk about microeconomics, I want you to think of a smaller population. We're going to say a smaller field of study, individuals and businesses. So we're going to look at it on a smaller level. Macroeconomics, the study and performance of the national and global economies. So when we're talking about macro, and if you do take macro, know that we're going to apply these same principles, but we're going to apply them to studying the way governments on the national and global levels interact in the economies of the national and global economies. All right, so here we see the study of scarcities and the choices that individuals and businesses make. What are some of the scarcities, you as individuals, what are some of the scarcities that you face?
Give me an example so I can stem from that.
Give you an example of something that you can stem from.
Actually, here we go. Got one. When I graduated respiratory school, there was a really high rate of students with the same degree as me and not a lot of jobs. So I guess there was a scarce amount of jobs at the time that I graduated.
All right, so scarcities, jobs that are available. Who else? I'll tell you, my biggest scarcity, you asked for me to start you off. My biggest scarcity.
Golf balls.
Time. I always say God gave us 24 hours in a day. I like to sleep. I don't get to sleep a third of it, but I do like to sleep some portion of that. And again, balancing, I told you my hobbies of personal and business and how to balance that time. So time is definitely a scarcity that I face. And scarcity, I have no doubt that all of you face. What else?
I know a really common one right now for some people is like money.
Money. Anyone other in Indiana want to give an example? Wisconsin, give me an example of a scarcity that you see in the national headlines or you might have read about.
Failure.
Excuse me?
Failure.
Failure in
Life.
failure in life.
At your job or failing at raising your kids or school, failing school, not getting your degree.
Struggling to apply that to a scarcity.
All right.
A scarcity and a choice that you have to make. All right, definitely time is a scarcity. 24 hours in a day, we can't make more of it, so we have to allocate it based on our own self-best interest. Money. You have some form of revenue or you have some form of cash coming into your household, and for some of you, that's it. Okay? You have a scarcity on how you allocate that. You take $1 and you allocate it toward eating out. That same dollar cannot be allocated toward increasing internet speeds in your home, going up to a higher, more costly communications package. So money is definitely a scarcity.
Food.
Food. All right, so I could explain that too. Definitely food and money are both going to be able to be broadened and say that we could see both of those scarcities in the national headline. We do know right now the federal government is putting together their budget. do see that budget every year, and definitely we see how taxes are on everyone's mind right now, and taxes are being debated in Washington. Taxes being a primary resource of revenue for our federal government in operating. So again, money, our federal government faces scarcity, and now some might counter me on this and say, well, we can always print more. Let's just ignore the fact that we could print more money, but let's just say that our government does operate within a scarcity of money. Populations of the world are struggling with enough food and clean water. So I'll include water up here as well as being a scarcity. Good job. And we could distinguish all of these, as I said, macro and on the micro level. All right, so to summarize, what are we told? How do choices end up determining what, how, and for whom goods and services get produced? And what do choices made in the pursuit of self-interest, in fact, promote social interest? So think about that. How can one pursuing their own self-interest promote social interest? All right, goods and services. Here we are. What, whom, and for whom. Goods and services are the objects that people value and produce to satisfy human wants. All right, look at this. Agriculture accounts for less than 1% of total U.S. production. Manufactured goods for 22% and services for 77%. But in China, what portion of China's economy is represented by agriculture? 11%. Manufactured goods for 47 and services for 43. Here you have two global powerhouse economies. But yet we see the economic breakdown being quite a bit different. Services, 77% in the United States. Why are we a service-based economy?
I'd be lying if I said I knew what you meant when you said service-based economy.
Service-based economy. Who can help explain what's a service-based economy? What's an example of a service-based industry? Who provides a service in your jobs right now? Who provides a service for someone?
I do.
You do. I'm a financial planner. People come to me for a service of talking about retirement assets or putting together investment strategies or insurance. Okay, I don't actually sell something. There's not a tangible good that I can point my finger on and give and deliver to someone. I'm providing that service.
Okay.
You work in a hospital, you're providing, unless, now I'm going to ignore, you're not manufacturing any devices, but if you're actually on the floor and you're providing a service, you're providing a service in the form of medical care. Now, it's interesting to go back and look through time at how the United States has evolved into a service-based economy. All right, so let's look at figure 1.1, where we're going to compare the United States and China. We're also going to include numbers for Brazil. What do you notice?
You suck at agriculture.
All right, we're low in agriculture compared to China and Brazil. But again, I'll ask, how do choices end up determining the quantity of each item produced in the United States and around the world? Okay, why are we such strong in services, but I'm not going to use your words, but we'll say weak, not the best in agriculture?
Nobody wants to farm again.
And we're saying that as we are all located right here in the Midwest.
I know, but there's not,
And I'm highlighting this question for, again, our geographical area here in the United States and where we're located. A lot of farming goes on in Wisconsin. A lot of farming goes on in Indiana. But as a whole, our country has moved away from it.
they'd rather pay somebody else to do it for them.
They would rather pay someone else to do it for them, is what I just hear.
Cheaper.
That's what I want to hear. Cheaper. Remember scarcity. Remember choices that we make and the incentives. Scarcity being money. If we can find it of a lower cost to import the agricultural product, we are going to import it. All right, the how. Goods and services are produced by using productive resources that economists call factors of production. All right, so we're going to say factors of production. If you're zooming in with us, if I start to write something on the board and you can't see it, please speak up. Because I'm not realizing right now how much of an angle I have here in recording. So if I'm cut off, just let me know. I'll try to set it back some and expand. What's our first factor of production?
Land.
Land.
Labor.
All right. Labor.
Capital.
Capital.
Entrepreneurship.
And the entrepreneurship. All right, when we talk about land, what are we talking about?
Land.
The gifts of nature.
The gifts of nature. All right, so when we talk about land, let's not just focus on dirt. Natural resources.
Oil, gas.
So these are the gifts of nature, things that we find in nature, things that we didn't really go out and produce, but things that nature, Mother Earth, give us. All right, what about labor?
Work, time, and work effort that people devote to producing goods and services.
The work, time, and effort that people devote to producing goods and services. Capital.
All the equipment and buildings.
Equipment and building. Let me highlight too, I do mean to include human capital.
My bodies.
I mean, like what you are increasing your human capital by being here tonight, I hope. So tools, instruments, machines, buildings, and other. And finally, entrepreneurship. What does entrepreneurship have in connection with these first three?
Well, to be able to be an entrepreneur, you have to have all those things.
Well, I don't want to say you have to have them, but the entrepreneur is the person who organizes these three items. All right, so the human organization of these three factors is what we'll call entrepreneurship. All right, so look at figure 1.2. And here we're going to see a measure of the growth of human capital in the United States over the last century. The percentage of the population that has completed different levels of education. So when I talk about, and what we were talking about, increasing your human capital capital by being here tonight. Look at here, back in the year 1903, approximately how many citizens of the United States had completed 4 years or more of college? I'm gonna have to blow this graph up, and I get down there.
Looks like 2%. Doesn't really say.
Okay.
That's like 2.
We're gonna estimate here somewhere between 1 and 2%. Now, if we scale this over to 2013, what's that number grown to?
Over 25%.
Over 25%. At the same time, we've seen the 4-year college education increasing. Let's look at the other extreme, less than 5 years of elementary school. In 1903, we were approximately 75%. Where are we today?
1, 0.
Approaching 0. Okay, so here you have asked human capital, and you've seen the expansion of human capital in the form of education. All right, for whom? Let's talk about these factors of production and answer the for whom question. For whom does land? What does land accomplish? Rent. All right, you zooming in with us. Come on. Get in this discussion. Land earns rent. Labor earns wages. Capital earns
Interest.
interest. And what is the entrepreneur going to earn? Profit. What happens if the entrepreneur does not earn profit?
He fails.
He fails, and he probably does what?
Goes back to laboring.
Goes back and makes another choice on how we're going to organize, how she is going to organize these factors. So if the first method proved unsuccessful, they would probably go back and change the organization of the other 3. All right, let's look at some big questions. 2 big economic questions. Do choices made in the pursuit of self-interest, I mentioned this earlier, promote the social interest? All right, every day, 320 million Americans and 7.2 billion people in other countries make economic choices that result in the what, how, and for whom goods and services are produced. The choices are made by people who are pursuing their own self-interest. Are they also promoting social interest? Let's first take a look. Self-interest. Who are you looking after?
Me, myself, and I.
Me, myself, and I. Choices that are of the best interest for you. Social interest. Who are we looking after? We're looking for society. We're going to focus on efficiency and equity. Are we being equal in the distribution? And are we being efficient in the allocation for society? So is that possible? Is it possible that you can be looking after your own self-interest and at the same time promote or increase social interest?
I feel like it may start out as a self-interest, but then it can lead to a social interest, if that makes sense.
And start out as a self-interest, but lead to a social interest.
Yeah, like you really want to start putting solar panels on houses for people because it's making you a fortune.
Uh-huh.
But then long term, it's gonna serve a good social interest because it's gonna reduce our carbon footprint.
Everyone hear that?
Yeah.
All right, solar panels starting out as
Moneymaker.
a moneymaker and at the same time lowering the carbon footprint. So increasing the social interest there. All right, let me write this name down. You're going to find it when you read the text. But what we're going to say, the father of modern economics, I'm going to introduce you to an economist named Adam Smith, whose work titled The Wealth of Nations, and specifically what he called the invisible hand. And I'm going to show you a quick video later tonight on the invisible hand. Adam Smith said, and I quote, "It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but to the regard of their own self-interest." All right, Adam Smith is who we give credit for being the father of modern day economics. And again, the economy that capitalistic economy specifically and how we operate. But again, he had this idea of the invisible hand. And that is, if I am after my own self-interest, you know, who else is out here? And are they invisible? So while pursuing my own self-interest, I could be maximizing their interest without intentionally doing so or without even looking their way. It's kind of like they're invisible out there. And again, he gives the credit to the butcher, the baker, and the brewer. When he went out and ate a meal, now I'm going to give you a time period, this is the 1700s, but when he went out to enjoy a meal in England, he went out and he wanted to have the best cut of meat. He very likely was studying the way distributions of economies were being handled at that time. And obviously coming from, you know, he was paid very well. He was a professor and he was given a stipend to do this study that made him approximately wealthier than the average English citizen at that time. But when he went out to eat, he wanted the best slab of meat. I'm going to assume here on this quote, the best beverage, and also wanted the best baked goods. So while each one of these parties that were responsible for delivering his meal were trying to become the best or had achieved the best, they also served him, and invisibly served him by having the best meal. Now, not everyone's going to agree with this. Now, as I said, we're talking more within capitalism right now, and I will later explain some different forms of economic theory. But in a capitalistic society, we think about, can we, in our own self-interest, in the pursuit of our own self-interest, promote social justice? I sit here and I look. You know, do you have an iPhone? Everyone know the history of Steve Jobs. What did Steve Jobs believe?
Putting his feet in the toilet gave him good ideas.
Putting his feet in the toilet gave him good ideas.
Fact. He would take his socks off and go and sit on the back of the toilet and put his feet in the toilet.
All right, but what was his thought on business? What was his thought on delivering a product?
I'll find facts.
Where's my IT?
Creativity.
Creativity.
Yeah.
I mean, let's argue he was, and I'm using the word was, he was a visionary. When you think about what he created and what his vision was, we have no doubt he was in pursuit of delivering the best product that he could put out, that he was going to attach his name to. All right, now, did that increase social interest? Well, there's a lot of folks carrying Apple products around right now. I read a statistic today that Apple has achieved 90% of all profits realized in the smartphone market. I'm studying Apple. I will say Apple releases their first quarter earnings tomorrow. We're expecting that they will report $250 billion in cash. It's approximately larger, it is larger than the market capitalization of Ford Motor Company, General Motors Company, and Tesla, all three combined. Just that cash portion on their balance sheet. Walt Disney, $190 billion. That's their market cap. So I would argue that that pursuit of definitely, they were successful in that pursuit. And again, based on the number of these devices that were sold and the prices that individuals paid for them, there was definitely a social, because we all became connected. Was it fair?
What do you mean, was it fair? You got the best product, it's not your fault that everybody else can't keep up. If you got the best people on your team and you're trying to.
Well, let's think about, let's approach it from, was everyone able to go out and purchase?
No.
I mean, what's an iPhone cost today?
$800.
How much?
$700-800.
$700-800. So this device here, $800. This is the 7. Could everyone afford to go out and spend $800 on a phone?
No. That's why I'm on a monthly.
Do what?
I said that's why I'm on a monthly payment.
All right, that's why they came up with the monthly payment. That's why they came up with the financing options on them. I would have to think my grandfather right now would probably be rolling over in his grave to think about financing. I'll never forget how he felt like when he retired from Ford Motor. And I can remember his thoughts when he found when Ford started offering financing from 4 years, from 48 months to 60 months.
2 months.
Now it's 72, but I remember how he felt in the words that he said in disbelief of when they rolled it to 60 months. And I'd like to see his thoughts and hear his thoughts, because this was a gentleman who told me, and I asked all my grandparents, if you have the ability to do this, I encourage you to do this. Ask them what is the greatest, or ask your parent, if you have an older parent, ask what is the greatest invention you ever witnessed in your lifetime. And it'll be pretty interesting. And I can tell you the grandfather I'm referencing said the computer and the internet.
Oh, man.
And he was over 80 years old when he went out and bought his first computer, hooked it up himself, got AOL, and yeah, he had an instant message, and I'll never forget, I saved it. I'll never forget, I was on AOL, and when I got an instant message, it just said, "Hello, Papa." And I mean,
What is it with old people signing off everything like it's a letter?
and how I felt, when I saw that, and just how it made me smile and made me think, this was a guy who always looked forward and always adapted and rode with change. Why do you sign off every email? Or is that what you're asking?
No, like, it cracks me up when you see on Facebook, like, your grandma will be on there and be like, "You look so cute today. Love, Grandma." It's like, Grandma, I know that it's you posting. I can see that it's you posting. But they always, like, sign off on everything. Or
I'm going
like,
to say probably the same
"Stacy,
reason
you look
that
good."
when I text or I use social media, I use proper punctuation, I use proper grammar, and I too would give you a salutation.
You say "see you later." You're not like
Love
Charlie Neal.
I would end everything that says, yes, I would give you a formal ending on it.
How old are you?
I'm 41.
Ugh. You're a little ahead of your time there.
All right. And now here, I'm giving encouragements too. I too would encourage you, when interacting in a professional setting, use proper grammar and punctuation. When you are posting these discussions, use proper grammar and punctuation. That will be one of the key items on the rubrics. How you text to your friends and how you communicate to your cronies, and I'm only saying cronies because I know Lindsay here, but cronies, then we don't, let's be a little more professional here.
I try, my redneck just comes out every now
All
and then.
right, so efficiency and social interest. Resource use is efficient if it is not possible to make someone better off without making someone else worse off. When we talk about efficiency and social interest, it's because of the timing. And one thing that I will do in these classroom meetings is I will definitely bring the outside world into these classrooms. Taxes. All right, here we go. Everyone feel free to speak. Just be respectful. Taxes. Let's use that as a resource. Taxes do provide what?
Money for the government.
Revenue for the government. Okay. So let's say money, taxes. Is our tax code right now efficient?
Come on, Miss Government, tell us what you think.
All right, let's talk about equity. Equity is fairness. But what is fair? Other items, and I'm putting thoughts in your head, I hope, but other items for you to think about. We talked about globalization. It was cheaper for us to import certain items, but through globalization, are we being efficient? Are we promoting balanced equity? Climate change. Let's expand that and think of environmental concerns. And economic instability. It might have been the first time I've ever introduced and asked those questions that everyone went silent. So I'm going to assume that you're going to do some self-thinking there. But again, these are good questions. All right, globalization. Is it in the social interest?
Apparently so.
Apparently so, I hear. If we go forward 100 years from now, folks are going to look at this time period. And we're going to say that in economics, there's been 3 distinct time periods. Right now, we'll find ourselves in what they're going to deem the information age. All right, during this information age, were we efficient? Did we promote balanced equity? Did we increase social interest? I mentioned Steve Jobs. Okay, think of some of the wealthiest people right now, Bill Gates. Okay, when I think of wealth and I think of information technology, I think of right now Bill Gates. Okay, in achieving the status of the world's richest man, did he promote social interest? Heads are shaking yes here. Elaborate. Why?
Without him, we wouldn't have a computer. Without a computer, we wouldn't have had advanced technology that we have today.
Personal computers that you're using now.
Yeah. I mean, even that technology transported into like the medical field or the manufacturing field. Had he not started that computer, we wouldn't have robots making things. We wouldn't have tiny microscopic you know, like video game style laparoscopic surgeries that we couldn't do before. We couldn't have the advanced forms of like life support that we have now for premature infants. So I mean,
You're talking about where you find information technology, yeah, in healthcare.
Yeah.
Look right now on your desk. Personal computers, phones. Everybody has their own app now. How are we communicating with folks? You know, think of this Blackboard shell, think of my econ lab. Think of this Zoom technology, and think of this network learning atmosphere that we're in. Social media. Technology does impact and influence us every day. You were talking at the Census Bureau, we've had some windy weather here today, and how we were having some disruptions in internet connections. All right, and this is our government employee talking. So definitely we've seen an increase in social interest. All right, I want you to skip forward to, if you're in the lecture, we're going to go over to slide 24. All right, 6 key ideas define an economic way of thinking. All right, so what's going to be our first key idea that's going to influence our way of thinking?
Choice is a trade-off.
A choice is a trade-off. The key word, we said, because of scarcity, we have choices to make. And those choices can be influenced, or based off of influences. Okay, but the choices that we make involve a trade-off. All right, so I said you made a choice for being here tonight. You made a choice to be in economics class tonight. What's the trade-off? Think of something else that you could be doing with your time tonight. I hear going to sleep.
cleaning my house.
Cleaning house.
Working.
Working. Mine was golf. It's dark now, so I couldn't be doing it now, but
Be getting drinks at the bar after.
it'd be open.
the golf session, no?
All right, but golf, family time. Something else. All right, so how do we make these choices? All right, we're going to assume everyone's rational here. So rational choices is going to involve comparing cost and benefits. So you made a choice to be here. Now, that involved a trade-off of time. It also involved a trade-off for money. All right, so what was the cost? And you know what it was financially. But again, the cost was all of these other items that you could have been using for time. But what was the benefit? And I had you say why you were here in the opening introductions, why you were here, what you wanted to get out of this class, and what brought you here. And you all focused on the degree. You all focused on graduation. Those were the benefits we talked about. What are you going to gain by being here? Cost. What's it going to cost you for being here?
Being educated.
Did I hear being educated?
Yeah.
That is true. Being educated, increasing your marketability, those are all benefits. Higher earnings. The cost is what you must give up in order to get the benefit. All right, so let's look over. And we're going to say everybody was acting rationally. So how do people choose rationality? And I'm up on slide 27. Preferences. Okay, so let's build on this idea of the benefit. All right, preferences are what a person likes and dislikes, and the intensity of those feelings. I'm going to assume everyone in here has a preference to become more educated. You prefer to be more knowledgeable. And your desire, it's just not something that you wanted or that you desired to be, but you had to have a strong desire because you're making a big sacrifice for being here. But your preference was so strong that you realized or you perceived the benefit of exceeding the cost that what you're giving up to be here. Now, I'll introduce you to a term here who I hope you take with you. This is one of these items of outside economics, but what's an opportunity cost?
Something is, an opportunity cost of something is the highest valued alternative that must be given up to get it.
All right, so when we talk about the opportunity cost, we are talking about the highest valued alternative. A while ago, we just talked about cost and benefit, and I said the cost could have been everything that you were giving up. Now, when I talk about the opportunity cost, imagine that you took all of the cost of being here, and whichever one you place the greatest value on, that becomes your opportunity cost. Now, the benefit must exceed that opportunity cost. Think of what it's going to take for you to make a rational choice. All of the cost combined, yes, but then that opportunity cost, you must perceive that a benefit is going to be, if you're acting rationally, that benefit is going to exceed that highest valued cost. And again, we call that highest value cost the opportunity cost. So what's your opportunity cost for being here?
I'll let you know what my opportunity cost is right now.
What's that?
Right now, we are looking for a house. And so not being here, I don't have the opportunity to go look at a house. But eventually being here is going to lead me to a better degree. Well, I'll have more time to go look at houses in the future.
So right now, Lindsay's opportunity cost is time. It's time that she could be spending. She's searching for a new house. She's under a
very short amount of time.
She's under a short amount of time. All right, nothing bad. So we're just going to say that the landlord wants to
reclaim his home.
Reclaim his home. He wants to live back in a home.
He don't want to pay his bills anymore.
Okay, so she's got to find another learning or another living alternative. So time that she could be spent searching for homes. So again, don't feel the need to express, but just think of what your opportunity cost. What do I mean when I say making a choice on margin or at the margin?
I had to remind her to pray to Jesus for me on that one. She's got an in with the Lord, so
Okay.
I figured I'd hit her up.
All right, so choosing at the margin. What are we referring to?
Compare the benefit with the cost.
Comparing the benefit to the cost. So if I talk about a marginal benefit, what do I mean?
The benefit that arises from an increase in the activity.
The benefit, the increase in benefit from the activity. Be more specific.
Studying before an exam. You study extra versus, using the time for whatever else. If you're giving yourself an extra amount of studying before an exam, it helps with your grade.
All right, so the benefit from pursuing an incremental increase in an activity is its marginal benefit. When you see the word incremental, here's why I'm looking down on that. This is the first time I present that as saying one additional unit. So when we talk about the marginal benefit, this slide is saying incremental increase. I want you to put a numerical value there under incremental and say one additional increase in activity. Typically within economics, within finance, within accounting, we talk about marginal benefit. We're talking about one additional unit of activity. And the same thing, marginal cost. The opportunity cost of pursuing an incremental or 1 unit increase in activity. If the marginal benefit exceeds marginal cost, your rational choice is to increase. So I would say that if you, at each additional unit of activity, and I can't illustrate this, I'll go back to finance real quick here. For those of you who have had me in class before, I've preached 100 times, and you will hear in this class me probably use this 100 times. What's the chief goal of a corporation? To maximize profit. Okay, not to create profit, but we're going to say to maximize profit. So if I am to maximize profit, let's say I am a manufacturer now, and I'm manufacturing widgets. All right, let's go back. Somebody might not know what a widget is. Let's go back and say phones. All right, so I'm manufacturing phones. If I'm earning a profit on those phones, and I decide I'm going to make 1,000 phones, and I sell those 1,000 and I'm still earning a profit. If I have the resources to make 1,001, and the benefit that I would receive off of manufacturing that one additional unit, if it exceeded the marginal cost of producing that one additional unit, should I produce it? Yes. If my goal is to maximize profit, I would continue to increase output to a level of when marginal benefit continued, as long as marginal benefit continued to exceed marginal cost, I would continue to increase output 1 unit at a time until that was no longer the case. Once marginal cost exceeded marginal benefit, I would stop production at that point. Make sense? All right, so think about we've talked about opportunity cost and trade-offs that you've made today. We've talked about what it means to choose at the margin and illustrate, think of 3 choices. You know, think of something that a decision you may have made at the margin. Can anyone think of one?
Can you repeat the question?
Think of a decision that you have arrived at, or a question that you have faced to where you made a decision at the margin.
So you're saying a decision that we had to figure out marginal cost and benefit?
Something where you looked at, if I go ahead and I have one additional, and you define activity, but if I apply one additional unit of activity, I'm still going to get more benefit out.
I do like meal prepping on Sundays, and so if I make an extra meal on Sunday, then it gives me a benefit of not having to cook another meal later. Would that be kind of one? Because I get a benefit of time?
One additional, So you would say one additional meal prep on Sunday gives you a greater benefit because you want that additional 20 minutes or 30 minutes of free time throughout the week.
Yes.
Okay, I can go with that.
And more choice,
What's that?
choices to different days.
Choices. She would make the choice. Now, if you go to the gym, okay, you've probably sat there and asked, should I go an extra hour? Or should I go an extra, we're gonna say, let's be realistic.
Should I do one more sit-up?
Should I do one more sit-up?
One more.
Should I do one additional minute? All right, I had that question this morning running. All right, am I gonna do one additional? All right, I've hit my goal, but will I get more, will the benefit of me going this additional, literally, and I was counting, this additional minute, will it still produce some type of benefit?
It's dad bod season. It's coming. It's coming in hot.
So I would say that would be one that we might have asked. Okay, if you have an opportunity to work and receive overtime wages or an ability to pick up additional wages, so like additional shifts, even listen, it doesn't have to be in overtime wages. If you are doing that, you know, there comes a point where there's certain industries where you might have unlimited overtime, and if you were able, you could work 24/7 if the demand was there. But at what point, at some point, you would see that the opportunity cost would exceed that benefit of one additional hour of wage. Okay. All right, so I said, let's go to slide 32. We want to talk about economics, social science, and a policy tool. All right, economists distinguish between two types of statements. What's a positive statement?
By checking it against facts.
We say that louder, please.
It can be tested by checking it against facts, so it has to be a true statement.
It can be tested. Getting ahead of myself. All right, so a positive statement can be tested by checking. So we can check it against the facts. What's a normative statement?
It expresses an opinion and cannot be tested.
It expresses an opinion and cannot be tested. Somebody give me an example of a normative statement. Or excuse me, let's start with a positive statement. Give me an example of a positive statement.
Sky is blue.
Can you repeat that, please?
Sky is blue.
The sky is blue. All right, we would say, let's expand this. Yeah, that could be tested. Let's think of one that would involve let's put an economic theory to this. Let's think of a question that involves a trade-off that could be used as a positive statement.
Global warming is being caused by the amount of coal that's being burned.
Global warming is being raised because of the amount of coal that we are burning. Yes. I do agree, and I do realize we could go and test the sky is blue, so that is a positive statement. But I'm trying to put the economic spin on it here, and a trade-off being global warming is being raised or increased due to the amount of coal that we're burning. That could be tested. And there could definitely be a trade-off there. There's definitely the subject of social justice. If you're the coal operator, there's the decision of self-interest.
Now, if, let's say that we use that statement and we test it, and let's say we prove that it's not indeed like a 100% true, would it then become a normative statement?
Well,
If
right
you
now we're
still
saying that
decide-
it's a statement that we can check against the facts.
Okay,
So I'm not going to focus on, we're just the ability that we can check it against the facts
okay.
is what I want to emphasize here. All right, a normative statement.
Diesel trucks are the best.
Diesel trucks are the best.
Sticking with coal,
Sticking with coal.
rolling some coal.
Or we ought to, when you hear the word ought, all right, we ought to cut, and remember, I'm from the coal country, we ought to cut our coal production by 50%. Again, putting the economic spin there, cut it by 50%. Then I could build on that. What else would I do with that? But if I just make the statement, we ought to cut our coal production by 50%, that would be a normative statement. We can't really check. There's nothing we can check. And the way I expressed that was definitely of my opinion. All right, an economic model. So when we have these positive statements, what can we do with them? All right, in economics, we say it's a science to discover positive statements that are consistent with what we observe in the world, and that enables us to understand how the economic world works. And we do this through creating what's called economic models. And an economic model is a description of some aspect of the economic world and includes only those features that are needed for the purpose at hand. All right, I'll tell you an economic model. My senior thesis was over income distribution throughout the state of Kentucky. Okay, so my question was why, and I was curious at that time, why did I come from the poorest county? There's 120 counties in the state of Kentucky, and why did I come from the poorest or among the poorest, but yet let's continue with this coal production. We were producing all of this coal. And I just assumed at that time in Kentucky, our largest city being Louisville, you know, that would have been the wealthiest county. Because again, major presences by Ford Motor Company, by Kroger, by UPS, home to Kentucky Fried Chicken, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut,
Papa John.
Papa John's.
Oh,
Yeah, Papa John's, second wealthiest man in the state of Kentucky, and huge.
who's the first?
Colonel Sanders.
The wealthiest person in the state of Kentucky, the guy who created public storage. Forbes just released their list recently. Kentucky only had 2 billionaires.
No,
And
no.
it was the gentleman who created public storage and Papa John's.
How many did Indiana have? I don't feel like we got that.
Yeah, Indiana, they have more in Kentucky.
Yeah, he lived in Kentucky, but he was from Indiana.
He's from my parents. They
Uh,
were
he started right
Okay.
across the street from where I am.
So I wanted to look at why was there income distribution across the state of Kentucky. Now, what are some factors that you might think would create income? What would make a county possess more income than its neighbor?
Revenue.
More population.
Businesses, like more businesses in one county versus another?
All right, so businesses,
Education.
education.
Population.
What's that?
The population, if there's more people, more work.
Population. Okay, but what I found, and I agree to each one of these, but let's throw something in. So when I built this economic model, all of these, as long as something did contribute to the subject at hand, I would include it in my economic model. But if I tested and I found an item, I'm just going to put trees. I'll be more specific. Pine trees. All right, if I entered pine trees, I'm probably not going to see that that was a contributing factor to income distribution. So I would strike that at hand. I would no longer consider that. And just at that time that I did that, my theory proved that if Jefferson County was we possessed the most of the major businesses and, I'm not going to say education, but definitely had the largest population, so most of these contributing factors. But at that time, I actually found that one of its sister counties had the highest per capita income than Jefferson County. Because I introduced population, when you think of population, I said Kentucky only had 2 billionaires. Now think of your cities and think of the largest cities in your state. You do undoubtedly have wealthy individuals, but you also have the other side of the population. Okay, so and if you look at our side, specifically look to the east, you're going to find that being the largest pocket of wealth in Kentucky, at least. So the whole idea about economic model building, as long as the factors continue to contribute to our idea, we're going to keep it in. If not, we would strike it and not use it. If you want to do a little self-homework, look up the study of econometrics. And I'm definitely going to say econometrics is specifically the science of economic model building. If you do look it up, don't worry, we are not going to be getting into econometrics. All right, you can stop the recording right now.